There is a moment, and most people never reach it, where you stop trying to connect to something greater and you realize you never were separate from it to begin with. You have been taught your entire life that the universe is something outside of you, a vast, indifferent space you send prayers into, set intentions toward, and hope responds to your effort. But what if that model is fundamentally wrong? What if the universe does not listen to you because you are already part of what it is made of? This is not a concept to believe, this is a shift to experience. And once it happens, nothing about your life looks the same. Stay with this, because what I am about to walk you through is not motivational content. It is not a ritual or a framework. It is the science, the biology, and the lived experience of what happens when a human being stops performing awakening and actually becomes it. This is the final stage, and it begins not in the mind, but in the body. Your body already knew. Long before your first thought took shape, something inside you was already communicating with the world, not through words, not through reason, through frequency. Every cell in your body is simultaneously receiving and transmitting information. Your heart, your gut, your nervous system, all of them generating and responding to electromagnetic fields right now, in this moment, without your permission or awareness. They are not waiting for you to catch up. They are already in conversation. At the center of this constant exchange sits your DNA. And here is where most people have been misled. DNA is not a fixed instruction manual sealed inside your cells. The emerging science of epigenetics has made this undeniable. Genetic expression is not locked. It responds. It shifts. And one of the most powerful forces driving that shift is something you experience every single day. Your emotional state. This is the part that changes everything when it finally lands. The emotions you live inside most consistently are not just feelings. They are biological instructions. They alter the chemical environment of your cells. They influence which genes get expressed and which remain silent. They generate a measurable electromagnetic signal that your body broadcasts into the space around you, shaping what you attract, what you perceive, and what possibilities you are even capable of registering. All of this happens before your conscious mind gets involved. Most people are broadcasting a signal they never deliberately chose. It was written into them by early experiences, by inherited fear, by years of conditioning absorbed before they had the awareness to examine any of it. And because that signal keeps broadcasting, the outer world keeps reflecting it back. The same dynamics, the same ceilings, the same patterns wearing different faces. This is not a character flaw. It is biology operating exactly as designed, responding faithfully to the dominant frequency it has been given. The first step toward real change is not learning a new technique. It is not adopting a better belief system or following a different method. It is something simpler and far more confronting. It is becoming genuinely aware of the signal you are already sending before you try to send a different one. Because you cannot change a frequency you have never honestly acknowledged. And once you do acknowledge it, once you bring real, patient awareness to what your body has been broadcasting beneath all the words and intentions and efforts, something begins to shift that no amount of thinking could have moved. The signal was never the problem. The unconsciousness around it was. The light your cells emit. Here is something that most people are never told. Your body glows, not as a metaphor, not as spiritual symbolism. Your living tissue, right now, as you read this, is emitting measurable pulses of light. Scientists studying living cells discovered that this light is not random biological noise. It is organized, it is sensitive, and it changes based entirely on what is happening inside you. When a person exists in genuine calm, not performed calm, not forced positivity, but actual inner stillness, the light their cells produce moves in smooth, consistent patterns. rhythmic, coherent, stable. The field their body generates is organized and clear. When that same person is living under chronic stress, carrying unresolved fear, or suppressing emotions they have never allowed themselves to fully feel, the light becomes chaotic, the pulses fragment, the patterns collapse into noise, the field scatters. The difference between these two states is not simply chemical, though chemistry is involved. It is not just about which hormones are circulating or which neurotransmitters are active. The difference is vibrational. It is the difference between a signal that is coherent and a signal that is broken. And that distinction matters more than most people have ever been told. Coherence is what happens when your biological systems stop working against one another and begin moving as a single unified whole. Your heart rhythm settles into a steady, organized pattern. Your brain activity synchronizes with it. Your nervous system, instead of running constant threat assessments, relaxes into a state of genuine openness. The electromagnetic field your body generates, which extends measurably beyond your skin in every direction, becomes stable, expansive, and clear. This is not a rare or mystical state. It is your biology functioning the way it was actually designed to function. Coherence is not the exception. It is the original condition. What most people experience as normal, the fragmentation, the internal noise, the constant low-grade tension, is the result of years of conditioning layering interference over a signal that was always meant to be clean. Incoherence is the baseline most people have inherited without choosing it. Thoughts moving in one direction while feelings pull in another. The body holding tension from a threat that resolved years ago or that never existed outside of anticipation. The mind narrating, analyzing, worrying, while beneath all of that, the body continues broadcasting a frequency of contraction and defense. The signal is noisy, and a noisy signal produces a noisy life. Here is where this stops being abstract. The field around you, the quantum fabric that modern physics has confirmed underlies all physical reality, does not read your intentions the way you might hope. It does not respond to what you want, what you visualize, or what you tell yourself you believe. It responds to one thing, the frequency your body is actually physically emitting in any given moment. Coherence in the body produces coherence in the field around it. And coherence in the field around you means that reality organizes itself differently in your presence. Timing shifts, opportunities surface, conversations that were stuck begin moving. Not because something magical intervened, but because the signal you are broadcasting stopped interfering with what was trying to reach you. Incoherence works the same way, in reverse. When the body is locked in survival, even silently, even invisibly, even while the mind is repeating positive affirmations, the field mirrors that survival signal back as friction, as resistance, as the exhausting sense that no matter how hard you try, something keeps blocking the path forward. This is why willpower alone fails. This is why thinking differently is not enough. This is why the person who wants to change their life but cannot seem to break free is not lacking discipline or desire. They are broadcasting a frequency their body learned before they had any say in the matter, and thinking cannot override a body-level signal. The body does not lie. It cannot be convinced with words. It can only be changed through experience, through states that the nervous system learns to recognize as safe, as real as the new normal. Real transformation does not begin in the mind. It begins the moment the body stops bracing and finally genuinely exhales. The observer loop and why reality repeats. Let me describe something you will probably recognize. You want something different. You can picture it clearly. The desire is real. It is not passive wishing. It is genuine longing for a different experience. And yet, no matter what you try, no matter how much effort you pour in or how many approaches you attempt, life keeps handing you a version of what you already have. The same patterns in relationships, the same invisible ceiling on what feels financially possible. The same emotional reactions firing in response to different situations, different people, different years. You change the circumstances, the experience stays the same. This is the observer loop, and before you conclude it means something is permanently broken in you, understand this: it is not a flaw. It is not evidence of weakness or bad luck or some cosmic punishment. It is a feature of the way consciousness participates in constructing reality. One that serves you when it operates with awareness and traps you when it operates in the dark. Here is the mechanism. At the quantum level, observation is not a passive act. The observer does not simply watch what unfolds. The observer participates in determining what unfolds. This is not philosophical speculation. It is one of the most thoroughly examined and debated findings in modern physics. The act of observation collapses a field of possibilities into a single specific actuality. What you observe, and crucially how you observe it, influences what becomes real. Most people hear this and immediately begin trying to think more positively, to observe life through a better mental lens, to consciously choose optimistic interpretations. And it rarely works, because the observation that matters is not happening in the thinking mind. It is happening in the body. The expectation that shapes what reality delivers is not a thought you are consciously aware of holding. It is a body-level knowing, accumulated through every disappointment, every pattern that confirmed itself, every moment when you reached for something and it was not there. That knowing lives in the set of the shoulders, in the shallowness of the breath, in the subtle bracing that runs through the jaw, the chest, the gut. The body's quiet but constant preparation for the outcome it has learned to anticipate. That bodily expectation is broadcasting continuously as a signal, and the field around you does not evaluate whether the expectation is accurate or deserved or consciously chosen. It simply organizes in resonance with whatever frequency is being emitted. It mirrors the signal back as experience. So the person who has absorbed, through years of repeated evidence, that their efforts do not lead anywhere, is not just thinking that belief. They are living it in their nervous system, and that nervous system signal is acting as a standing instruction to the field, consistently collapsing possibilities toward the familiar outcome, not because the universe has decided to hold them back, but because resonance is simply how energy organizes itself. Like calls to like, always without judgment. This is why the loop feels so stubborn. It is not maintained by conscious thought. It is maintained by the body's learned familiarity with a particular state. And the body, as a survival mechanism, is wired to prefer the predictable over the unknown. Even when the predictable is painful, even discomfort when it is familiar enough registers as safer than uncertainty. The brain chooses a known outcome over an open one, and in doing so, it keeps collapsing the same probabilities. The loop does not break when you adopt a new belief. This is the piece that most personal development gets wrong. You can intellectually replace an old belief with a new one. You can sincerely, consciously decide to think differently, and the loop will continue running beneath your new narrative, untouched. Because the body has not yet experienced the new belief as true. It has heard it, but it has not felt it, and the field responds to what is felt, not what is decided. The gap between a stated belief and a felt belief is where transformation efforts go to collapse. It is the space between knowing something in the mind and knowing it in the cells. Crossing that gap requires something different than thinking. It requires experience. The loop breaks when the body lives through a genuinely different state, even briefly, even imperfectly. A moment when the familiar bracing releases and something else enters. Curiosity, genuine openness, presence without agenda. In that moment, the observer is no longer overlaying the past onto what is in front of it. The field, suddenly no longer receiving the old instruction, opens. Probabilities that were previously collapsed back into sameness become available again. Reality does not need you to have it all figured out. It needs one honest moment where the body stops insisting on what it already knows. That moment is enough to begin. How frequency generates reality. You are not creating your reality with your thoughts. You are creating it with your frequency. And frequency is the product of your actual emotional state, not the emotional state you perform or aspire to. Gratitude, when it is genuinely felt in the body, expands the electromagnetic field the heart generates. Research on heart coherence has demonstrated that the heart produces the strongest electromagnetic field in the human body, measurable several feet beyond the skin. When that field is coherent and expansive, it interacts differently with the environment than when it is contracted and chaotic. Coherence attracts coherence. This is not law of attraction mysticism. It is the physics of resonance. Frequencies that are compatible find each other, amplify each other, organize around each other. This is why people who operate from genuine inner peace seem to move through life with a kind of effortless timing. Opportunities arrive. Conversations happen at precisely the right moment. Seemingly random events line up in ways that feel almost orchestrated. This is not luck. It is coherence in action. Their internal signal is organized, and organized signals interact productively with the world. This is also why the same person, in a state of fear or desperation, seems to encounter resistance at every turn. The signal is incoherent, and incoherence calls back incoherence. Emotion, then, is not a passenger in this process. Emotion is the mechanism. Every time you allow yourself to genuinely feel appreciation, not perform it, but actually access the sensation of it in the body, you are recalibrating your signal. Every time you move through a difficult emotion with awareness rather than suppression, you are clearing distortion from the broadcast. Every moment of authentic feeling is an act of creation at the quantum level. The moment intention becomes clean. Most intentions carry hidden weight. They carry the anxiety of wanting, the tension of not having, the fear that even as you reach towards something, some part of you is already bracing for it not to arrive. This is not a character flaw. It is the natural result of having been disappointed before. The body learns to protect itself by not fully committing to hope. And in doing so, it contaminates the signal. Because the field does not negotiate between the vision in your mind and the fear in your body. It responds to the dominant frequency. And if the body is broadcasting lack while the mind is visualizing abundance, the dominant signal, the one that lives in muscle and nervous system and breath, wins every time. Clean intention is different. Clean intention does not feel like asking. It feels like knowing. A quiet, settled sense that what you are holding is already a reality at a different frequency, and your only task is to become the version of yourself that is aligned with it. There is no urgency in clean intention, no gripping, no checking. It is released the way you release an exhale, completely without trying to hold on to where it goes. This is the paradox that undoes most people. You have to care deeply without needing. Desire is natural. Attachment to a specific outcome is the distortion. The moment desire becomes dependency, the signal collapses back into the frequency of lack. But when desire is held lightly, with the openness of genuine curiosity, it moves through the field without resistance. And this is where trust enters. Not blind hope, somatic trust. The kind that lives in relaxed shoulders, in an open chest, in the breath that moves all the way down into the belly without interruption. The kind of trust that tells the nervous system we are safe even in the space between where we are and where we are going. When the body genuinely feels safe, permission opens. And permission is what allows reality to respond in ways you could not have predicted or controlled. What happens when coherence becomes your default? There is a threshold. Most people who pursue inner work catch glimpses of what it feels like to be in genuine alignment. Moments where everything flows, where clarity arrives without effort, where the right thing happens at exactly the right time and you feel less like you caused it and more like you allowed it. These moments are not accidents. They are not rewards for good behavior. They are previews of what life feels like when coherence stops being a state you occasionally visit and starts being the baseline you return to automatically. This threshold is what this video is really about. Because crossing it changes everything. Not just how you feel, but how reality consistently organizes itself around you. When coherence becomes your default, several things begin to shift in ways you may not immediately have language for. The first is that emotional recovery accelerates. Difficult experiences still arise, challenges still appear. But the charge behind them weakens. What used to take days to process moves through in hours. What used to take weeks moves through in days. Emotional energy flows instead of stagnating. And flowing energy does not create repeating patterns the way stagnant energy does. The second is that reality begins to feel responsive rather than resistant. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you are no longer pushing against the current of your own frequency. Friction decreases. Timing improves. The sense that you are working against some invisible opposition fades, and in its place comes a quieter, more reliable sense of being supported. The third shift is perhaps the most unexpected. Other people begin to experience you differently. Coherence is biologically contagious. The human nervous system is wired to synchronize with the dominant frequency in its environment. This is why spending time with someone who is genuinely at peace tends to leave you feeling calmer, even if nothing was explicitly discussed. And it is why someone operating from deep coherence changes the emotional temperature of every room they enter and every conversation they are part of, not by trying to, but simply by being what they are. You stop managing the energy of situations and start setting the tone of them. Conflict softens around you. Clarity emerges in conversations that were previously stuck. People show up differently in your presence because your presence itself is different. This is not performance. It is radiation. The final stage, becoming the field. At some point, if you follow this thread far enough, something fundamental shifts in how you understand the relationship between yourself and reality. You stop thinking of yourself as a signal sender trying to influence a field outside of you. You begin to experience yourself as the field. This is not arrogance. It is not a claim of supernatural power. It is the simple recognition that the separation you were taught to believe in between you and the universe, between your inner world and outer reality, was never as absolute as it appeared. The boundaries between what is inside and what is outside are, at the quantum level, permeable and interdependent. The observer is not separate from what is observed. The frequency you embody is not separate from the reality that frequency generates. When this lands, not as an idea but as a lived felt experience, the entire project of trying to change your life from the outside collapses because you understand that you are not in the world the way a stone is in a river. You are in the world the way a song is in the air that carries it. You are made of the same substance as what surrounds you, and your state of being is constantly co-creating what that surrounding looks like. This is what the ancient teachings across every culture were pointing toward when they spoke of oneness, not a poetic ideal of togetherness. a literal description of the nature of reality, that separation is an interpretation, not a fact, and that at the most fundamental level, you and the field you move through are expressions of the same continuous phenomenon. When you begin to live from this understanding, manifestation stops being something you do. It becomes something you are. You do not sit down to visualize outcomes. You live as the version of yourself for whom those outcomes are natural. You do not send intentions out and wait nervously for them to return. You simply become so recognizably the frequency of what you are aligned with that reality has no option but to reflect it back. And here is what becomes unmistakably clear at this stage. The universe has not been withholding from you. It has been waiting for you to stop arguing with yourself about whether you deserve to receive. How to actually live this. The practice within the presence. Everything described so far might feel philosophically compelling but practically elusive. So let us bring it into the body, because this is where the entire conversation has been pointing. The practices that move you toward this final stage are not complicated. They are not even time-consuming, but they require something that is increasingly rare in the way most people live. Genuine, unhurried presence with what is actually happening inside you. The first practice is this. Before you react to anything, pause long enough to locate your body, not to analyze what you are feeling, not to judge it, simply to recognize where sensation is arising. Is there tightness in the chest? Is there contraction in the gut? Is the jaw holding something? The moment you locate sensation with curious awareness, the nervous system receives a fundamentally different signal than it does when you simply react from that sensation. Awareness is not passive. It is active regulation. And in the space between stimulus and response, the observer loop weakens. The second practice is allowing emotion to complete itself. Most people interrupt their own emotional experience before it finishes. Fear arises and they suppress it, distract from it, argue against it. Grief surfaces and they override it with productivity. Anger appears and they perform calm while the signal of anger continues broadcasting unchecked beneath the performance. Emotions are not problems. They are information. They are the body's way of processing experience and restoring equilibrium. When you allow them to move, when you breathe into them instead of away from them, when you give them space to exist without either being consumed by them or running from them, they complete. And completion is coherence. Suppression is interference. Allowance is restoration. The third practice is cultivating states rather than pursuing outcomes. Instead of reaching for what you want to have, practice feeling what you want to feel, now without requiring external circumstances to justify it. Not as a trick to manifest faster, though coherent states do accelerate the responsiveness of reality around you, but because the quality of your internal experience is the actual substance of your life, and waiting for circumstances to change before allowing yourself to feel whole is the pattern that keeps wholeness perpetually out of reach. Gratitude without an object, presence without an agenda, peace as a choice rather than a reward. These are the practices, simple but not easy, consistent but never forced. You came here because something in you already knows that there is more available to your experience of being alive than what you have been living. That knowing is not wishful thinking. It is intelligence. It is your biological system recognizing at a level deeper than language that its natural state is coherence, not struggle. That it was built for resonance, not resistance. That the separation between you and a life that feels fully alive and fully responsive is not a gap of effort, but a gap of frequency. The final stage of awakening is not a destination you arrive at through sufficient discipline or correct belief. It is the falling away of everything you were taught to carry that was never actually yours. It is the moment the signal clears. It is the moment you stop seeking the field and remember that you are it. That moment is available to you now. Not after more work, not after more understanding. Now, in the body, in the breath, in the willingness to be exactly where you are without insisting it should already be different. Drop into that willingness and watch what reality does next.